just took my middle school ELA praxis and I have some thoughts. I have this index card here for some notes to tell me to say some specific things. Getting right into it, my general thoughts of this praxis was that it was exactly what I thought it was going to be and still difficult. If you've taken any SAT, para test, AP test, you basically will understand the format of the praxis. The praxis is multiple choice and it is a couple of constructive response questions. That format changes, I think, depending on the specific tests you're taking, but in this case, I'm specifically talking about the 5049 middle school ELA praxis. Going into this test, I knew that I struggled with very specific grammar rules and also the match between classics and their authors. So those were the two things that I knew I had to study before going into this test because they were the baseline things that I knew I struggled with. So while studying classics, I looked for the author, the title, and I actually did not look at the general theme or the plot of each book. I just memorized the title and the author. But after taking the test, I found that something reoccurring would be they would ask a context question based on the plot of the book, which is something I didn't research. So while I think I got those questions right based on knowledge of other books that I had already read or something like that, that's something else you're going to want to study. So you're going to want to study the title, the author, and also kind of at a bare minimum, the genre of the book, some sort of basic understanding of what that book actually is. In terms of grammar, I went over kind of your high school level grammar things. So prepositions, coordinating conjunctions, adverbs, things like that. They're a little bit higher level than what you would probably have learned in middle school, but that kind of stuff, it did come up, and they were things that if I hadn't re-looked at them beforehand, I definitely would have been totally lost. So basic grammatical rules are things you're definitely also going to want to look over and look over beforehand. Another thing that caught me off guard while I was taking the test is how much and how specific the poetry questions were. So there were quite a few poetry questions which I had expected, but they were very, very specific about function and form. So in my studies, I looked at haiku, I looked at limerick, I looked at sonnet, but with the rest of them, I hadn't really thought about it because those are the kinds of poems that usually come up in these kinds of tests. But the test ended up asking quite a diverse set of questions that pertain to poetry. So definitely don't slide over poetry as something easy that you will be able to figure out. If you struggle with poetry, definitely look into it. I know even in school, they spend one really short unit, at least for me, on poetry, so I didn't find it to be that important of a thing to study, but poetry is going to be, at least it was for me, a big part of that test. And then the last thing I found really helpful that I re-looked into before the test was a general understanding of various teaching and grouping methods. And this is something that was kind of on the practice test, but not enough to kind of link to the amount of significance it was given on the actual test. You're going to want to know at the very least basics of how classrooms can be organized, how groups can be formed, and also how you can implement those to a particular situation. So if a student is struggling, which one of those can you apply to that student? They're gonna generally be situational questions. So if you have a question that asks, Susan struggles with fluency, what is a tool that you can use to help boost her fluency? That's the kind of question you might see. I mean, not exactly that, obviously, but you're going to want to be able to answer that using actual terminology. Here are my study tips. My first one, flashcards. I am not a big flashcard person. I've never been a big flashcard person, but even the act of writing out the answers and the questions on the flashcards is a form of studying. You don't have to go through and actually flip all of the note cards over and read them and test yourself because it sticks in your brain because it's something that you wrote down. I made flashcards for everything. So even if it was something I pretty much had down, I made a flashcard for it, because as I said, it just works to reinforce whatever you think you know, because comes test time, you didn't study it because you thought you knew it, and the question asks it in a weird way and you just have no idea. I think that people tend to say that these tests are not meant to trick you or not meant to make you fail, and that very well could be true, but the way they ask certain questions is inherently tricky, and it very easily can make you second guess what you're thinking the answer is. So even if you think you know something, act like you don't. On that, you're going to also want to make a study guide. So I made a study guide for this exam and for my history exam, which is going to happen at a later time. The study guide was great because it was something I could look back and reference at as I was making my index cards, because they were major topics that I wanted to remember to hit as I was studying. I made the study guide actually as I was taking the ETS practice tests. So then that's the next thing. The next thing is to take the ETS practice tests. They are, I want to say $20. They are 100% worth it. If I did not take those practice tests, I probably would have missed quite a few things that are on the test. They're annoying to have to purchase. They are overpriced, as all of this stuff always is, but they really are very helpful in understanding both the format and also the type of questions that are going to be asked. And my last tip is to watch grammar or other review videos while you're doing random stuff. So I have a couple of playlists on YouTube that I took from other people who I guess were studying for their 5049, and they're just a collection of various videos that are mostly based in grammar and maybe a couple of book summaries. But I would turn those on while I was cleaning my room, while I was messing around on the computer, window shopping, whatever. And having that go on in the background, you might not be putting 100% of your attention to it, but you're still retaining some amount of information, and it's better than completely not doing anything if you don't feel like studying that day, because it can get very exhausting. If you don't feel like studying, you can continue doing whatever you're doing, but you just have these short, a lot of times 5-minute videos on in the background, which summarize how to use an adverb or what a preposition is or what the giver is all about. These tests are hard. They're meant to be hard, they're meant to be annoying, even if they say otherwise. All you can do is study the best way you know how, and go in there and give it your best shot.